So I took up studying medicine. It's something I've always wanted to do from the time I was a little kid. My parents had quite an incredible influence in my life. And from the type of upbringing that they gave me, this desire to care for people evolved within myself. And so I found myself always wanting to pursue medicine as a career. You sort of have these, I want to say, almost romanticized ideas of what medicine could be like. I'm going to go help people, I'm going to make a difference. Yes, I know that there's some sweat and toil involved, but nothing could really prepare you for what it's like once you're working the profession. They talk about informed consent in medicine, but I don't know if it's necessarily true for when you're becoming a doctor. So my typical day, 10 days tend to go in an absolute blur. I wake up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, get myself ready, and then I make my trek to work. I have quite a long trek to work because this place is where I could get a job. Then I get to work, and the mad rush begins. We start pushing cases, one in, one out after the other. And typically, I wouldn't have really eaten by then. I've gotten into the habit of not having breakfast anymore. Then 2 to 3 o'clock, theatre starts winding down. Then we've got to start with the pre-meds, which is preparing patients for the next day. You've got to go see them. If there's complications because patients aren't prepared properly in the ward, then that can ruin a whole afternoon as you try to prepare the patients. Come back to theatre, discuss the complicated patients with the consultant, and then hopefully, if everything has gone well with the day, leave between 4 and 5 o'clock and start again the next day. So typically, there really isn't much rest in the day. It just keeps on rolling on. And try to grab hold of the quiet little moments of beauty as they quickly flutter by sometimes. Being on call can be quite a grueling experience. Typically what it means is that you are available to work in that department doing the after-hours shifts, all right? Typically after hours begins at 4 p.m. on a weekday, ending at 8 a.m. the following day. However, most of us work day shifts also. And so for us, call would actually start in the morning at 8 o'clock on the morning of a given day and continue through to 8 o'clock the following day. You'd be working through the day and working through the night. And most departments work like that. It's very, very rarely when you would get a gap to sleep or get a gap to have a rest. It's made more difficult by the fact that in these after-hour scenarios, the hospital is understaffed. And so it is a few people that are carrying the backbone of, especially in public sector, what should be carried by more people. So there are many factors that put a toll on me as a doctor. I think during my internship in ComServe, what I experienced was just the incredible patient burden that we have in South Africa is quite a toll. That coupled with the fact that we have staff shortages, we don't have the capacity to care for our patients as well as we would like to. And so we end up just processing patients almost like a production line, a factory, not necessarily catering to all their needs as what we would like to. Into that, we also are faced with resource limitations. Some of the biggest frustrations when you're at work is that it can take you half an hour to get all of the equipment together to put a drip in a patient. And that just delays everything because it's so difficult to find where things are when the stocks are running low or the cupboards are not organized. It's the little things that make it difficult for you to be able to do that. And then if I spend half an hour putting up a drip, that's time I could have spent counseling that patient properly. And it affects us deeply because we want to provide that care properly. We want to do a proper job. We want to do our best for the patients in front of us. And it's when things go wrong, when there reaches a tipping point, when there is an adverse event with a patient, when something like that happens, that it really hits home and it affects us psychologically, emotionally, and people become jaded. It suffer from burnout, suffer from these psychosomatic and psychological and emotional things that spill over into their social circles, into their family lives. It really can be quite damaging. So the normalization and the sort of sucking up mentality of the tensions, I would say there's a dual fold to it in terms of what results in it. There is extrinsic pressure from others to, oh, well, we went through this and, so it was we've come out okay. And so you kind of just got to get through it yourself. And there is also an intrinsic pressure in oneself to kind of just keep moving. You must remember that to be in medicine, you need to be a very goal-directed person. And so we create these goals for ourselves and we internalize the pressures that we perceive from outside also. And often that is actually to our detriment, because when you are operating in this tunnel-like vision mindset, many things fall by the wayside. Relationships, family, mental health, physical health, all of those things can absolutely fall by the wayside for the sake of pursuing this goal. In my own personal experience, I have seen how the difficulties of work have affected my relationships around me, both my family's, friends, and even my relationship with my partner. I've had to narrow down my life a lot in order to negotiate the all-encompassing nature that the job is. And so that does become lonely, because I've seen how my social circle has filtered down. And I do miss that. I miss connecting with my friends. I miss spending time. I miss just having, fun recreational activities. So it does become a very lonely road with a pocket of a few treasured people that stick around long enough to walk the journey with you. I think that the hierarchical nature of medicine, the paternalistic nature of medicine, all of these things can actually start being reinforced from student days. And I think that those are things that medical schools can have a look at. Relating to the content of medical curricula, I do think that more space can be made for students to be students. I think that this is something that is absolutely undervalued. And many medical curricula do not appreciate this. They kind of try to make students into doctors immediately without giving them a chance to actually just study and be a student. I also think that there needs to be space within a medical curriculum for us to reinforce healthy mental coping mechanisms, for us to reinforce colleague debriefing, so that we can debrief these situations and learn how to debrief these things with each other as colleagues from the earliest days of students. I was very fortunate to recently have been involved in a really positive experience. Our head of department saw fit to arrange a formal debriefing session, which was facilitated not by her, but by a professional, a psychologist. And it was really quite a profound experience to see people offloading, sharing their experiences, very cathartic, and to see how people carried experience from years and years ago and bringing it to the table now, because maybe this was the only time that they had opportunity to share these experiences. It made me realize that there is so much value in this, because we, us working here in this workplace, we understand the difficulties of what we go through here. I think that we are definitely losing people. I have many friends who are either either already abroad or actively pursuing to move abroad. I myself actually even made endeavors in that regard to move abroad. For me, the biggest shame, however, is where we lose people to the profession, full stop. And that's an absolute sadness. I have I know of friends who have left medicine to pursue teaching English abroad, and or do other endeavors. But I think it is a real shame when people decide to do those things because they have just become disillusioned with medicine, and that is a real absolute travesty. In terms of what our hospitals can do to support us, firstly, I think that they need to make every effort possible to just be good hospitals, that they are adequately stocked with supplies necessary to provide the services, and that they are adequately staffed so that we as doctors can do our jobs. That's all we want to do. And the last thing I think that hospitals can do is to make sure that our hospitals are safe environments for us to practice.